The super storage is it is the mod that I created that adds an SD card slot, a micro SD card slot to the NES and SNES Classic. I'll be going over how to install it on a Super Nintendo, I believe. I was sent one by a customer. To mod his system for him. I haven't opened it yet. Oh, they're Super Nintendo controllers, of course. And I'm just getting prepared, and then I'll start recording. Over the next couple days, I'll edit it. I have an install video out there, but it's quite old. And quite long, and I think I can edit it down. So, and I have a nice little new tripod where I should be able to do it a bit better. And I got a new screwdriver, which is really nice. I just gotta kind of tile my windows here properly, and I want to make sure that I have the focus set. Perpendicular like that. So I am streaming to both YouTube and Twitch right now, so if you chat in either of those, I will be able to see your messages. I may or may not answer them right away, depending on if I'm doing video stuff. I don't want to edit too much, but I will answer as I go along as much as possible. But if I'm just setting up right now, so if you got any questions, let me know. This is the board that we'll be installing, and I need flat flex cable, and I need a micro SD card slot, which looks like that. Okay. So I got this nice new light. It's gonna be very bright. There's not much I can do other than try to bump down the exposure. There we go, that's a bit better. Alrighty. Just want to check a couple things. It's pulling in. Yep, okay. Okay, so let's get started. So welcome to the Super Storage Rev 3 install video. I have here a Super Nintendo that was sent to me by a customer that we're going to be doing the install for. When you receive the Super Storage, you'll receive it in 3 parts. You have the micro SD card slot, the board adapter, and the flat flex cable that goes between those two. It's put into 3 parts so that you can easily position it once it's installed. And that's basically it. So let's get ahead. Let's go ahead and install this thing. So we're going to put these aside for now. the stuff that you're going to need to install it is probably some flux. I use Amtech NC559. You are going to need some solder, which is somewhere around here. Oh, it's right next to me. Right there. We got some solder, and we got some alcohol. This is just isopropyl alcohol. We'll use that to clean up the flux when we're done. And you're going to need a screwdriver. I have a nice little electric one, but any small Phillips head should do. The SNES Classic only has one type of screw, so if you have a small screwdriver, that's all you'll need. So the first thing we're going to do is actually take this apart. To do that, you basically just have to lift up these 4 pins here, and just this exposure a little bit. And yeah, that looks pretty good. So you just take these 4 pads. I can get them with my fingernails. You might need to use some tweezers or a spudger or something like that. I've done enough of these where this is quite easy. I usually recommend sticking them on there like that. It makes it a bit easier. So there's 4 screws in each of the corners. So to take this apart, you just want to take your screwdriver and then undo the 4. Still holding on a little bit. There we go. So there's the 4 screws out, and then what you're going to do is flip it over, and you want to be careful that when you flip it over and take it apart, there's a ribbon cable that connects the power switches to the motherboard, so you can just like open and flip it like that. Next, we can just disconnect this cable here for the top, and we can set the top aside. We won't need that. And then in here is the motherboard. You basically have the 2 controller ports with wires running to the motherboard, so you can just disconnect these. And then we can just undo these 5 screws on this motherboard. There's going to be one here, 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 and here. And then you can just lift out the motherboard. It should come out pretty freely. So now you can set the bottom aside. I usually like to take the screws and throw them inside just so they don't get lost. And then you can put that aside somewhere. Next is the heat shield. The heat shield is just held on by a thermal pad in between. You can kind of see the blue in there. The easiest way to take this off is just to kind of shimmy it around and then peel it off. It's pretty simple. Make sure that you don't touch this with your hands and get your oil from your fingertips on it, because this doesn't really need a heat sink, but it is good to, not mess it up if you don't have to. Okay, so this is the bare board. This is the top. You can tell it's the top because the R16 CPU is there, as well as the RAM and NAND chip, as well as the 2 controller ports. If we flip it over, this side is a little bit more unpopulated, but it's actually the most important side. It has our pins right here, which we use to connect the SD board adapter to, and it's got an HDMI and everything like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in my handy little circuit board vise. I might have to adjust my camera a little bit once I get this in. but I can put this in like this. And I'm going to be soldering upside down, so I apologize for that ahead of time. There's a certain way that this goes in this place. You don't have to use something like this, but I'd recommend that you secure the board somehow. It just makes your life a little bit easier when you try to go and do this. If I could secure this properly. And get some tension on there, perfect. All right. So I'm going to try to solder it like this. I'm going to turn off autofocus. Okay, that looks good. So now what you want to do is you want to take your board adapter. It looks like this. And basically what we're going to do, again, I'm kind of doing this upside down, so it might be kind of tough. We're basically going to put this board here and then solder it. That's the only soldering that has to be done. There are 8 points on the board, and they're usually pretty easy to do. The holes are big enough and the board is thin enough where it doesn't take more than usually one pass whenever I do it. So with that being said, we're going to take some Kapton tape. You can use Scotch tape. I didn't mention that at the beginning of the video. You can pretty much use any kind of tape that's going to help hold it for you. I like to use Kapton tape because it doesn't leave a residue. Kapton tape looks like this. You'll commonly see it on anything that's kind of heat sensitive, and that's kind of what it's made for. So I'm just going to cut up a strip. Like so. And I'm going to attach my board to it so that it kind of looks like this. And then I'm just going to lay this down where it's going to line up. And this is the tricky part if I'm doing it upside down. And you just want to line up the holes. Like so. Just enough so it's being held properly and it's in the right position. So now I'm going to take my soldering iron, or sorry, I'm going to take my flux rather. You always want to start with flux. It just usually comes in a syringe like this. And you can kind of squeeze it in here. I'm going to do these 6 points first since I covered the other two with tape. The other two are the hardest to do because of the thermals on the pads, but you'll kind of see what that looks like. So now that I got a copious amount of flux there, I'm just going to take my iron and my solder. I have a fairly pointy tip on this thing, but it's not anything too wild. The only thing I have to kind of show reference is a toothbrush. There we go. I don't usually like using like the finer tips. I have one here. I usually don't use something like this, which is more needle-like. I use something that's a little bit more blunt. It's a little bit easier when installing these. So I'm just going to take my iron and I'm going to take it and do a couple of these points. I am doing this upside down and kind of backwards, but I've done enough of these where I feel pretty confident. So I just did the 6 there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel off this tape. And then I'm going to take some more flux and put it on those 2 points. And then I'm going to take my iron again and finish this up. So this ground point, the one that's labeled GND, will be the hardest one to do. And it's because of the way that they designed this board. It wasn't really designed to be soldered to. So this pad, you'll see like how this is all light green here, and there's some dark green in here. The light green is actually copper on the circuit board. So the ground is just kind of an exposed round circle on that giant plate of copper, which means that it's going to soak up heat a lot more easily. So it's going to be kind of harder for the solder to flow onto it and hold it, but we're going to try anyway. Okay, that looks like it did a pretty good job. I usually run my iron at I'm running at 550 degrees right now. That's usually higher than I would normally run it when doing an install like this. But I usually do these pretty quickly, so it's not that big of a deal. Usually you'll want to be in the 450 to 500 range. And you want to make sure that you do have an iron that is temperature controlled. You can get some cheaper $50 ones out there. To me, it's a worthwhile investment if you're going to be doing any sort of modding in the future. The soldering iron and flux are going to be the #1 tool you're going to have. So I would make sure that you kind of invest in that a little bit. So here I'm just going to take, I want to clean all of that flux off, so I'm just going to take my little thing of isopropyl alcohol. I'm running at 91% ISO. And then I'm just going to kind of clean this up. I'm going to have to use both ends and maybe a couple more to actually get this proper. And then I will show you why this was a good job, and kind of some of the things I see when people solder these on their own, the mistakes that are made. Yeah, that's probably going to do it. I'm going to hit it with a microfiber rag just in case. I usually do this to make it a little bit more clean. Just want to make sure that my customers have the best. Okay, so that'll evaporate and that'll be fine. So I'm going to see if I can get this pretty close to the camera. See if I can adjust the focus a little bit. Actually, I should put the camera down. Sorry for the jostling and if it makes any bad noises. It's a bit too harsh, huh? Okay, so you can see here that I'm going to use my tweezers to kind of point at all this, but you can see that I have a lot of these that are kind of flowing into the board. They look a little bulbous only because of the way that this solders to the board. But you can see like this one for sure is kind of floating down onto it. Same with this point here. This point's pretty good. This is probably one of the more average jobs I've done as far as quality goes. The main thing that you want to see is that these points are shiny. If they're not shiny and they have you know, they look a little bit more worn or have more of a matte finish to it, it's usually because the solder didn't flow properly, and you probably have a cold joint. A cold joint isn't going to give you any strength, and a cold joint on these is usually a pretty good indicator of the solder not. If you have a cold joint, the solder probably hasn't flown all the way to the board. The other thing that I'll see is what I like to call like chocolate chip. So you'll have a little spiral on the top of these, or maybe it'll look like ice cream or something like that. You'll have a spike coming up. That's usually because you're not using enough flux, or you're not using flux at all. You definitely want to buy some to make sure that you get those good joints so they kind of flow. So that was kind of it for this install. I'm just going to put it back together at this point, so I'm going to bring this back up. And then I'm going to put this back on autofocus. Let's see if it'll do it for me. Let's get some light in there. Yeah, okay. Okay, so I'm just going to take this out of my PCB vise. That sounds crunchy, but trust me, it's okay. Just going to make sure this is clean. Again, kind of a neat freak when it comes to this stuff. So then what we want to do is we want to take our heat shield and flip the board back over, and we want to line this up so that it'll kind of go together properly, like so. You can just line up the holes like that. It won't matter which, but you can always put it together in the case. And I need the bottom piece, which is here. I'm going to take all the screws out of it. And then the motherboard is just going to go in with the HDMI port on the bottom and the heat shield up. I'm just going to kind of angle in like this. If you have the NES or the Famicoms are a little bit more difficult because the controllers are wired and do not actually have a controller port, so they're a bit more of a pain to get working and sandwiched together. But it should fit in. Actually, before I do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my flat flex cable from the Super Storage kit. And I need a little bit more alcohol in here to kind of clean this up. So I'm going to take my flat flex cable, I'm going to open up the locking mechanism there, and then I'm just going to insert this in. This shouldn't, unlike the power cable for the top board, it's not necessary to use any force here once the locking mechanism is open. I can take a little bit just to get that inserted like that. And then once that's in, you can just take the locking mechanism, push it in, it'll click, and then that should be pretty good to go. So now we can actually mount it back into the casing. What happens is that this flat flex cable, when I do installs for the Super Nintendo, I will bring it over like this and then mount the card here. I'm actually going to start up my hot glue gun. I'm going to do the rest of this. So usually what I do is I wrap this cable around the flat flex cable that comes up here, because it doesn't really put as much stress on this, and you can kind of route this behind and everything. So autofocus isn't working too well. Aperture is not great on this camera. It's just a Logitech webcam, so we deal with what we can, right? To install the actual SD card slots is the same kind of procedure as the underside. Undo the locking mechanism on the board, insert the cable, and then you can just click that into place and then it should be good to go. So it's going to take me a couple minutes to get my my hot glue gun heated up, but I can plug in this cable while we wait. Unfortunately, my hot glue gun is not that fast, so I can kind of struggle with this apparently. There we go. This would be a good time to insert the card, micro SD card of your choice. If I can find one. As of right now, there is an issue with the super storage, but it's not necessarily just the super storage. If you were to add an SD card slot yourself by using wires and a slot, there's information online on how to do that. There's an issue right now with software where some cards, like this one, the Samsung 64 gig EVO Plus, it won't work. It won't let you boot the system with it in. It will let you boot the system with it out, and it'll let you put it in and then do SD prep, which basically formats the card and everything like that. And it'll let you do all of that, but it won't actually let you boot the system with the card in. I'm working with the Hacksheet 2 devs to kind of figure out why that's an issue. It seems to be something with the all-winner CPU, and we got to see if there's like a software way around that, or if there's a hardware spec out there that we've kind of missed. But like I said, that's not really an issue with the super storage itself. It would affect all SD cards out there. I've done enough revisions of this board recently to know pretty succinctly that it's not anything with what I'm doing, unfortunately, but I would love to blame me, but oh well. Oh, hot glue, are you ready? Nope. So there's like 3 people watching right now. You guys got any questions? I realized I didn't hit record on this before I started, so this was just kind of for you guys. I'm gonna have to record another one once I get another board in, unless I download the YouTube one, but I might try to actually do like a proper video and figure out how to do all these controls properly. Because I can turn off autofocus, and that's gonna help, because I can go like this. Get that a little better. Yeah. What is Discord up to? It's like, ooh, what time is it? It's like 1:30 a.m. here, so I'm in Central Time, so that's probably not much going on. If you're into PlayStation Classic stuff, BleemSync 1.1 was released this past week. Looks pretty cool. I haven't installed it personally. I kind of headed up BleemSync for a while, but then life stuff got in the way. So I kind of let Capcom and the other guys take it over, and looks like they've done a great job. They got OTG working, which is huge. Yeah. And I actually got, I can kind of show you my little setup here. So this is going to be ugly. There's me. I just got a new pegboard installed today. I'm trying to stay out of this shot, I swear. Let's bump that up. New pegboard. It's 3 different pieces. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. It's really nice. It's metal too. I think I'm going to go up 1 level higher. But I got all of my nice soldering supplies in it now. And things are actually accessible. Like if I need wire, it's right here. It wasn't expensive either. It was only like, it was 25 bucks for 2 panels. And I have a 4th panel sitting in the closet right now that I'm not going to use until I get the other ones. Let's see if this is hot yet. Oh, did my battery die? That's what it is. Yes, I have a nice new Ryobi Hot Glue Gun it's battery powered. I saw this in Home Depot. Actually, I saw it on Colin Furz's channel first. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I figured it was going to be like 50 bucks or something like that, and it was 30. So I already had some of the Ryobi tools with the 18 volts, so I thought, hey, let's splurge a little bit. Not that that 30 bucks is really all that expensive, and it's probably just a switch and a heating element. But this tip is actually really nice. It doesn't drip as much as like a normal one would. And the trigger on it is really nice. I can safely say it's the best hot glue gun I've ever used. Simply because it is wireless. Because I kind of hate like going under the desk and everything and having to plug all that crap in. What else? I've been working on modding Xboxes. The original Xbox. I've been thinking about actually opening up a service to do mod chip installs for those. I've been doing LPC rebuilds. I did 2 of them yesterday. Streamed it actually. If you want to take a look on YouTube, Twitch. It'll be on Twitch because I wasn't using Restream yesterday. And then I'm trying to do a 128 megabyte mod. I was kind of failing at that yesterday. I don't know what's going on, but it's fragging. But I have like more than enough RAM chips to do like at least 4 consoles. How many did I buy? I bought 30, so it'll let me do 6, 7 of them. Is this thing heated? It's getting there. That's the only thing about this glue gun though, is for some reason I feel like I have to flip the switch on it like multiple times in order for it to actually heat up. That is going to look real nice for my client when it's all done, nice and pretty. It's in there like that, and then we'll just screw it together. I guess I can do these screws. I got this real nice torque adjustable electric screwdriver by Jake My. which is kind of a weird name. It looks like there's a couple of these floating around on the internet, kind of the same style. This is really nice aluminum, and it charges through a micro USB port. Hello, doctor. How are you? And by torque adjustable, I mean like, you know, just like a normal drill would be. It's not actually like the $1,200 electric screwdrivers that they use in assembly lines, so I really want one of those. There we go. Alright, this is hot now. So, we're going to drop it like hot, like that. I usually use hot glue in this stage. Just because it kind of insulates from the board a bit better. Working on your thesis. So does that mean you're not a doctor yet? Have I been lied to on the internet, of all places? Haha, filthy liar. I don't know if you can keep watching the stream. Okay, so that's that. I'm going to take out the card because this is my card and they didn't provide a card. So I'm going to leave that out and I'm just going to screw this together. So in order to do that, just take this top half, kind of do the opposite of what we did in the beginning. Ooh. I actually never remember how these cables like are folded or twisted or whatever when I take them apart. I never pay enough attention, so I just kind of put them how I want. But it always works out. So I'm gonna just drop a screw in each hole, assuming they fall in properly. That. Yeah. And then we just take our screwdriver and, believe it or not, drive screws. So that's basically it. I've been streaming for about 40 minutes, and most of that time was probably waiting for the hot glue gun to heat up. Because I had it off. Half the time I was waiting for it. But that is basically it. Just went through and did a whole install of super storage. I still have some time left tonight, so he wants me to extend his controllers too. So I might do that for the hell of it if people are watching. And then I can kind of ship this out. But yeah, so that's the real nice thing about this mod is when you're done, it's all screwed together and it's clean. So I'm shamelessly plugging because I made it, but yeah. So we just installed the super storage, which is the mod I made for the SNES Classic and NES Classic. It adds a micro SD. Ooh, it adds a micro SD card slot to your system. It's a solder board, and it lets you add internal storage. When you get all set up through HackG and everything, it just kind of recognizes it as having the additional storage, and you can sync games to it and all that cool stuff. I've seen people that have had 256 gig cards. I think that's kind of wild to think about, like a little system like this that honestly isn't like the best at emulating things, but it's really cool looking. It's in a nice little package. And they get 250 gigs on it. And it's just nuts. Yeah. So I actually have to go downstairs, I believe. Yeah, I don't think I brought it up. So I will do the controller mod as well, extending them. I'll show you how that's done. So I'll be back in 2 seconds. Alright, so put these away. So we've got a SNES classic controller extension cable. So this is another service This is another service I offer on my site. Over at echo10.io. That's echo10.io. I actually think this is the first person to actually have bought this service. So that's pretty cool. But basically, the SNES controller comes with a pretty short cable. It's like 5 feet or something like that. I got really annoyed with it being too short, so I took these 10-foot cables and then figured out how to kind of splice them in. You can do this on your own. There's nothing special about that. Some people would just rather have me do it, which is fine. I'll do it for them. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to unscrew this. We're going to take the cable out. We're going to have to desolder it. We're going to have to solder the new one in. And then we're just going to swap the tips because I really like these gray tips, so I swap those with the black ones here. So we're just going to take this apart. Actually, I could probably keep my hot glue gun heated up. See, I knew I bought that hot glue gun for a reason. So this is what the board looks like on the inside. It's pretty simple. The classic controller is a pretty simple device. It has this chip here, which takes the controller button inputs, converts it to an I2C protocol, data line, whatever, and it follows the classic controller spec, which is actually pretty widely documented through the Wii homebrew scene. So this is the board. Basically what we're going to do is we're just going to desolder this connector here, these 4 pins, and then we're going to solder a new one in. I usually like just going through the holes instead of like trying to splice the wires or anything like that. It just makes it a little bit easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut this off. If anybody cringed, I apologize. And I'm just going to use some flux. Looks like there's some residual flux left over from the manufacturing process, which is kind of cool. And then I'm going to take, let's try this with that. take some tweezers and I'm going to insert them in these holes here. And kind of just to give me leverage for when I'm doing this. I'm just going to try to touch all 4 solder points at the same time. And try carefully to just take this connector out. A couple out, there we go. So I lifted that connector out. You can use like a desoldering iron. I've got one over here. I don't usually fire it up for something this small. Then what I'm going to do is, since I got that flux there still, I'm going to use some soldering braid, which looks like this. I'm just literally braided copper. And I'm just going to suck up some of this, and hopefully it comes up and I won't have to use a solder sucker. Yeah, they lifted out nicely. And this is actually working pretty well. And this I've only done to maybe 3 machines total, so it is kind of good to learn what the technique I'm going to be using is. I'm going to clean up this flux real quick. There it is, with alcohol. And then when we solder it, we might not even need to use flux. Sometimes with wiring stuff, it's just a bit easier. I actually forgot what order those wires go in. Luckily, I have a second controller where I can figure that out. So this part, I haven't really figured out exactly how I want to do this. Over the times that I've done it, I usually take my extension cable here. I try to kind of break this plastic a little bit. That doesn't seem to be working. Let's try these pliers. Nope. Let's try. Worst comes to worst, I'll just cut the cable, but I usually don't like doing that. So let's try just separating this. These cables can differ wildly depending on what brand you get. I usually try to find what looks most applicable on Amazon because of the free shipping. Like I said, I don't do really many of these, so I don't really keep an active stock of these cables. But that just comes apart like that. This is all hot glued, and yeah, so that was for nothing. I'm just going to chop this end off and strip it back. So I actually need to take a look at the other controller. Actually, conveniently packed up. That's all. You are not first, my friend. I have some other people on Twitch. I'm not sure what I hate more, bubble wrap or packing peanuts. Everyone hates packing peanuts and everyone wants to play with bubble wrap, but I'm not sold on it. Alright, so, oh, sorry about that. I'm just gonna undo this. You are the first on YouTube, I'll give you that. So this video description is inaccurate. I'm no longer doing super storage install. That only took me like a half hour. This is extending SNES Classic cable. So this goes, if we're looking at it like this, red, yellow, green, white. And black will just trim back. All right. So I haven't actively been watching the stream. I'm watching chat, but I'm not checking like video quality or anything. So if anything happens, like focus is shitty or crappy, let me know. If certain sounds are louder or something like that, let me know. I'll do my best to minimize it. If anybody's wearing headphones, I'm using my teeth right now to strip these wires, so. Teeth are the best wire strippers. I forgot who said that. I think that was Ben Heck. Alright, so I need to hold these. These wires so I can tin them. I'm going to take a little other PCB device, which I don't use as much because it's not made of metal. So when I use my reflow iron on it, it kind of melts, which isn't very good. So I usually only use this when I'm doing through-hole stuff. Plus it's a little annoying to get set up properly, because it's got this twisting mechanism and it kind of sucks. I said shit earlier and I said oops because I didn't know if I set this to an 18+ channel. But let's be honest, nobody's going to be watching this later on, and if you're up right now you should go to bed because you have school. At least I think you have school. It's May. You probably have school. If not, you should still go to bed. I should be in bed. But I have installs to do. So I'm just tinning these wires when I put them through the hole. They don't get all bunched up. I'm afraid. Not like scared, but like afraid, like afraid. That was a bad joke. I make bad jokes. If you have a problem with that, leave. Enough people in my life have anyway. Anyway, so I'm gonna stick this through because it's gonna go red. I hate doing through hole. I would love to make this process easier on myself. Somehow. But it's not necessarily always possible to do that, so I'm just gonna have to bear with it. Red, yellow. Green. And then white. Let's see. Search this a little bit. Alright. That's not working. So what we're going to do is we're going to snip that tiny little end off. I have a little solder blob there, which is not going to let me go through that hole because the holes are too small. If you know what I mean. Alright, so now that these are all through, I'm just going to bend them over like this. I would bend them because it makes it easier to work with when we actually go to solder it. And it holds all the wires kind of in place. So now what I'm going to do, I'm not going to use flux on this, there's no need. I'm just going to touch these points. Most solder you buy these days has a little bit of flux in the core. And it should be sufficient for most through-hole components. Though maybe I should. Maybe I should. Let's do it. Because I bought this big 30 cc's of flux. Might as well get my money out of it, right? Beautiful. See, look at that. I always use flux. You know, I heard that for like the first like 5 years I learned how to solder. And I was like, no. Oops, sorry. You don't need flux. Why would you need flux? There's flux in solder, that should be enough. And boy, was I wrong. So now, I'm a huge proponent of flux. One could say I'm no longer in flux about flux. But yeah, that was bad. I am fully willing to do that. Alright, so this is cleaned up. Scrub just a little bit. Okay. And then here, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to inspect it and make sure that there's no frayed wires kind of straggling off. Doesn't look like it, so I'm going to hit it with the glue gun. Hot glue is the best way to kind of hold this type of thing, in my opinion. It was the same way till I fried my 3DS. Did they have hardware mods for the 3DS? I only got them when they did software stuff. I did do I did a bunch of DS modding. That's kind of how I first started getting into modding. Not hardware stuff, but, well, some hardware stuff, but I didn't actually do any soldering or anything. I mean, I guess they have a mod chip for like everything, so. Oh, it's back up the NAND. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I'm not the best at soldering. I'm still learning. Watch a lot of Louis Rossman. A lot. Where's my cloth? No, that's my shirt. Cloth. I have a microfiber cloth. The microfiber cloth was right on my lap. Believe it or not, of all places. Alright. Still seems like there's some flux residue, so I'm just going to clean that off. Specifically, I noticed that there's flux residue on the buttons, which is a big no-no, because if the buttons are sticky, that's not going to feel good. It's going to feel mushy and sticky, and I can't have that. What's funny though is, like, I think I charge the same amount to do this mod as the super storage, and it takes me more time to do this. But I don't have to like make the parts, and didn't have to develop the technique really, so I don't charge as much, which I think is fair. And that's pretty good. I'm gonna hit this one point with some more solder. Where are my points? Oh my god. No, that's just gonna be unsoldered. Okay. Interesting. Oh, as long as it's connected, that's all I care about. Anyway, okay. So that is the new cable attached. Next part is super easy. Just put it back in the case. Which we need the front, which is right here. Like so. And we're gonna flip it over. Like so. I really like the Super Nintendo Classic controllers, like these guys. Nintendo did a great job of replicating the exact look and feel of the originals. The buttons feel like exactly the same. But one thing that they improved upon, which I'm actually super stoked about, is these shoulder buttons. In the original controller, this shaft was actually a metal shaft, which I guess is more durable, but putting this together, they would always like slide out, and it was always a pain in the ass to repair. So I'm glad that they made that change. Plus they made like a bajillion of these, so I'm hoping that they'll be available for quite some time. Alright, so I didn't realize that I kind of installed this upside down, but that'll be fine. It's not going to cause any harm. So we'll just put this back. sure it's sandwiches. These cables are the same diameter and everything, so it'll screw together properly. And that's my screwdriver. And these are all the same screws, the same length. I don't think they use the same screws in the old ones. That's one thing I would probably change. Use a bit more plastic in these and give them a bit more support, which is good. Especially in the edges. But I don't think that they use the same quality screw. And it kind of shows. But there is the one with the new cord, and this cord is super long now. It's 10 foot. So I could just leave this here and ship it back to them, but usually what I like to do is swap these out. These black pieces, just to kind of get that more authentic feel. So what I'll do is I'll undo these two screws, take this apart. And this is pretty not finicky, fragile when you get them apart. So you gotta be careful not to fray these wires at all. But what I'll do is I'll take the original end like this. I gotta get my tri-wing T5, tri-wing 2.5, and you gotta take that to fit these screws. But you can kind of see some of the differences. Nintendo likes to use this metal wire guard here, so it makes them a little bit stronger. The molded is probably just as fine. This cable isn't as grounded, but that's why they use the black pen, but it doesn't even matter because the ground's not used in the controller at all. So what we'll do is we'll just take this out. I believe in the Wii ones, and like the Wii Classic controllers, they actually used the proper stuff. Come on. Like all the really what we want is this metal piece here, which we can usually grab like that. Like I said, I haven't done one of these in a while, so it's always a learning experience. There we go. Now it's out. Now it's out. Like I said, they're finicky. Let's see. Now those locking mechanisms came out, so those have to come out like this, like that. All right. And they can be inserted back in. And then these we want to be a little bit more careful with because we're going to keep these tabs. Pull this out. I'm going to take this cable out, but we're going to keep those plastic things. Alright, so that's kind of out. Actually, I wonder if we can just... There we go. So we want this plastic piece. Because all we have to do then is go like this. And just kind of fiddle that in there. Like that. And I believe that works because I think they might sell it to like licensed manufacturers, and they just might sell it to whoever. And we can just snap this together. And that's basically it. So we've got a controller now with a much longer cord on it. It's about 10 feet now. And I basically just swapped it so this connector still says Nintendo on it. I just do that as a bonus because the regular plastic housing that comes with these extension cords is a little bit junky, and it's not labeled at all, so I just kind of like that look, I guess. It's completely over the top and doesn't need to be done. But that was one of them, so I'm going to do the second one now. And then I'm probably not going to ship that out tonight because I want to get to bed. But I will let the guy know that it is done. So now we're just going to take our other one here. Figure out where the other shoulder button went. Red, yellow, green, white. Red, yellow, green, white. Red, yellow, green, white. I'm going to cut that one there instead this time. Red, yellow, green, white. Red, yellow, green, white. Red, yellow, green, white. I'm going to use a slightly different technique for this. Put a razor blade underneath the connector so that I can just kind of bend that. I'm just going to put some solder on these points. I don't think they're using lead-free solder. They should be. Oh wait, this is Nintendo. Of course they're using lead-free solder. What's up? That was actually quite a bit easier. So I'm happy with that. Okay. So now, that's annoying. Some got on this side. Cloth is here. Alcohol. Clean. Clean. Solderwick. Let's clean this bad boy up. I don't suspect that this one's going to clean it all the way up. Maybe it will. Maybe I will get lucky today. And maybe not. And maybe not. Have I done NES Classic controllers? I have. I have 2 of them myself. They're exactly the same process. There's nothing special about them. The NES Classic and the SNES Classic are exactly the same in pretty much every way, other than case design. And the original 2017 NES that was super hard to come by because people were hoarding them. Not hoarding them. Nintendo didn't make enough of them. What happened is Nintendo was working on the Super Nintendo Classic, and they decided to do a revision on the board, which I'm calling the original one was the 2017 NES Classic board, and in 2018 when they released, no, sorry, the 2016 revision of the board, and in 2017 they came out with the SNES Classic. SNES Classic had a slightly different layout. The big thing is the SD pins were moved to the bottom of the board instead of the top for whatever reason, for whatever their debugging purposes are. And thus we have 2 different super storage sizes. But yeah, the controllers are pretty much exactly the same. Again, I get super anal with a lot of my stuff, so I'll make sure that everything is like perfectly clean, because I know this is for somebody else, but I know I would want them super clean, so I make sure to do them super clean. But yeah, it's basically desolder connector, desolder connector, solder in new wires, and you're good to go. And then just the extra shit if you want to do the extra shit. Ooh. My hot glue gun is making some very nice webbing for me. I'm going to become the Midwest hot glue Spider-Man, I think. Actually, that sounds like a terrible idea. I'm in Milwaukee. We don't have many large buildings. We have some. We're getting more. But not many. Alright, so we're going to take the extension cord here. And we're going to crack this open somehow. At first, when I first started doing these, it seemed like this company would plastic weld these things together, but you just gotta find the right kind of point. If you're not super talented with a razor blade, not saying I am, but if you're not super talented, try cracking it with something first. Actually, these might be welded very slightly. Maybe I just need to crack the seal. Yeah, spider pet. That's not gonna work. Let's try that. Yeah, perfect. All right, so if you really need to get this open, best way, pliers, crunch. Again, that part can break and this connector can get mutilated because we're not using the female connector. We're just going to be snipping this off. Like so. Boom. We got our wire. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to cut it back about an inch and a half. I don't know, however long that is. And cut any wires too deep. I did. I'll be super careful with a razor blade sometimes. Actually, I should try stripping with these. These are my nice Klein scissors for networking. Unfortunately, Klein doesn't make any left-handed scissors. Stripping on them does not work as well for me. I'm a dirty, dirty southpaw. And it is the worst thing in the world. It should be considered a disability, honestly. Like, I almost wish I was joking. There is a surprising, I mean, it should be treated like colorblindness or farsightedness. Because there are a lot of things that us left-handers cannot do that right-handers can do. Like, write in a spiral notebook properly. Or, like for myself, I cannot game with my mouse on the right-hand side. I can't use a computer with a mouse on the right-hand side. Therefore, I have to buy a left-handed mouse. The only people that make left-handed mice is Logitech makes one, the MX610, which was made in 2003. And Razer makes a the Razer Death Adder, as well as the Naga, I think. The Naga has too many buttons. Maybe it's not the Naga, it's something else. Mamba? Maybe the Mamba? Might be the Mamba. Whatever it has too many buttons on the side because it's made for RPG users. I'm not an RPG user. Or a player, rather, whatever you want to call it. Anybody remember what those colors were? Red, yellow, green, white? Yeah. No. Yeah. Red, yellow, green, white. Okay. And Razer also makes the Death Adder left-handed edition, which is, as far as I know, they're just selling stock that they've had. They're not actually actively making any more of them. And that is the mouse that I use. So eventually when that dries up, I'm gonna be out of luck. In that case, I think my skills will get good enough where I can just make my own. Also, keyboards. Keyboards are not made for left-handed people in mind. Especially left-handed gamers like me that actually use the mouse on the left. I use the arrow keys for up, down, left, right in first-person shooters and pretty much every other game. And the problem with that is, if you've noticed, up, down, left, right has a blank space above it between that and the navigation keys like home and end and page up, page down. That's really a pain in the butt. My idea, which I think I might execute in the future at some point, is to make a keyboard that brings those navigation keys down, because I'm also a programmer, so I use those navigation keys all the time, like home and end and page up, page down. I don't use insert, but I could put a different button there if I wanted to. My idea is to make a keyboard that brings that down. And then I can actually use shortcut keys. I can actually use keys for, like, I can't tell you how much of a pain it is to bind, like, the inventory buttons and, like, have to reach for everything. I have to reach for jump, which is at shift. And most people have to reach for it because they use, like, space or something like that. Whatever Quake and whatever popularized. Ooh, and people are dropping off because all I'm talking about is left-handed stuff. I was born left-handed. My dad forced me how to be right-handed. Yeah, I'm the opposite. Not necessarily the opposite. I was born left-handed. My dad was left-handed. I learned how to compute from him. Therefore, I use the mouse left-handed. Alright, we are going with, from this way, we are going with red. Going red through here, and then we're going with yellow. If your extension cable does not use red, yellow, green, white, or maybe it does but it's not in that order, just match the order to whatever was on. Actually, no, I can't say that. Make sure it has red, yellow, green, white. If it doesn't, then you're going to have to look up the pinup for the classic controller. And I'm not going to help you with that. That's not my job. Alright, so we got those wires through. I'm just going to solder them on. And possibly the worst part of this is going to be over. And then I can start putting this thing back together and then swap out the end, and then I will be done for tonight, and then I can go to bed. Because it's 2:30, 2:20. I want sleep. I like sleep. I don't get enough of it, but I like it. Alright. Oh yeah, so the I was saying about the Razer Death Adder, and I'll just finish that up real quick, is the Razer Death Adder is one of the best left-handed mice I've ever used, because it's actually a gaming mice that's contoured for left hands. It was done under the guise of the owner of Razer being left-handed. I'm not sure I believe that anymore, because they don't make any other left-handed ones, and they came out with the next version, which wasn't for left-handers. So I'm not sure how much I believe that, but what I do believe is that the Razer Death Adder left-handed, or the Razer Death Adder 2012 version, or whatever they came out with, whatever the original version was that's based on, is inherently flawed. It has an issue where it has an acrylic scroll wheel. Now, I don't know how many people know. It might, no, actually, no, it might be nylon. I think it's nylon. I think it's clear nylon. Anyway, nylon is a fairly soft plastic. It's not prone to cracking like acrylic is. Plexi, whatever you want to call it. It's not prone to cracking, but it is fairly malleable and bendable and all that stuff. So what ends up happening is, after you use the scroll wheel for a time, and it could be 6 months into using the scroll wheel, it could be 2 years. I've had one that lasted 2 years. I've had some that have lasted 3 months. The scroll wheel will eventually, the shaft on it will eventually give way, bend, especially if you get mad like I do. But last time it happened, it wasn't because I slammed anything or anything like that. It just gave way. So it just likes to give way, and then the scroll wheel stops functioning, and basically just caves in. And Razer doesn't want to acknowledge that in any way, which is fine. I mean, I get it. It's a left-handed product. Not many people are buying it. That's fine. That's why they changed it to the 2013 version of the Death Adder. I get that. What I don't get is, why do I have to go through 50 layers of support in order to get a replacement? I don't even care if you send me the scroll wheel. Oh, that's the other thing, actually. Like, I think you can find the scroll wheel online, or scroll wheel replacements, which aren't as good. You can find them online, but when you put them in, the mouse is made with 2 circuit boards in mind. And those 2 circuit boards are held by the crummiest ribbon cable I've ever used in my life. You bend it once, and it breaks off at the motherboard. And I've gone through 3 or 4 different mice that have done the same thing. And they could really easily solve it by bumping up parts by 20 cents. Well, it would cost me 20 cents. It would probably cost them 2 to just use a flat flex ribbon cable between the 2. Or some higher quality ribbon cable. But the fact is that ribbon cable is soldered on. And it's basically not meant for any sort of repair. So they've inherently made a mouse that cannot be repaired with a scroll wheel that is known to fail. At least by some of us. It's not a cheap mouse. I mean, I don't even think you can find it on Amazon anymore. I think my only course of action to get a new one is just to go through Razer support, hoping that they have a, look at that, nice and tidy. Nice and tight. It's around the little arrestor, or whatever you want to call it. So we're going to swap out the ends. But yeah, my only way of getting a new mouse at this point is going to be contacting Razer support, hoping that they have some warehouse filled with them. I don't want that mouse for the rest of my life until somebody makes the next left-handed mouse. I don't know who that's going to be. Maybe it'll be Echo 10. That would be great. I'd actually love to do that. I really want to get Echo 10 to be a full-time business. So I'm a developer by day. I would love to do hardware mods and accompanying software if need be. I would love to do that for my day job. I would love I would love, love, love to make my own mouse and then release it for left-handed people. Because even if I never got as big as something like Razer, that's perfectly fine with me. I just want products. I want to make products that I want to use, right? I made the super storage because I wanted to fit all of the SNES games on the SNES Classic. There was enough storage for that on the system. So I made an SD board that was easy to install because I wanted it to be clean, and other people wanted that too. And it's done pretty well so far. Now I'm doing a super stretch, which is literally just swapping out the extension cable, or swapping out the cable on the controller with an extension cable. I did the super stretch because the cables were not long enough for me. I constantly had to pull the the whole unit forward out of the TV console. That really annoyed me. So I decided to do something about it. Then I noticed that all the cables were pretty interchangeable on the tips when you can actually find the cable that you desoldered earlier. Here it is. Oh, no, that is a different one. Alright, where is the other gray cable? Where are you? I'm kind of not to use a play on words with soldering stuff, but I'm kind of in flux right now with my entire setup. So everything is very messy. Ah, I'm sitting on it. I'm always sitting on it. That's what she said. Okay, so we're going to take our Y-wing screwdriver, and we're just going to undo this. Yeah, so this process has taken me about an hour to do. Kind of talked through a lot of it. So obviously that's going to be a little bit more extended. But I don't, for all the work that's involved, I don't think I charge all that much for the super stretch. I think I might charge like 45 bucks. It's about 10 bucks for the cable, the right cable, because if you need the wrong cable, you don't get this nice swapping functionality, and the cables just aren't as good quality. I don't think 45 bucks is too much to ask for parts and kind of the care that I put into it. But maybe it is, because nobody else really has bought it, and that's fine. I wouldn't want to be doing this all day. I would rather do super storage installs. Those are a bit more fun, because you get to unscrew multiple things, and you're not dealing with through-hole, and you're not dealing with connectors, and all that stuff. But this is just something I like to do, because I like paying attention to the small little details. It's all about the small little details. There we go. That one came out a bit easier. See, if I do one, I know how to do the other really easily. Alright, so now, this is as simple as taking these two parts. Yeah, let's put it like this first. Yeah. So we just line up, tab here, tab there. I didn't point that out on the last one, but should be pretty self-explanatory. So yeah, like I said, I didn't, earlier when I did the super storage install, I didn't hit record, which is kind of the classic problem, isn't it? So, I think this week I'm going to be doing another install. I have to check my orders and see what's coming in. But I will be doing another install. I will probably try to do it a bit earlier so I can get a bit more of an audience, and then I can actually like record that video. So if you are in the US and you would like to watch that, you can subscribe if you want. You don't have to. It's completely up to you. Or just watch the Discord. I'll be posting in both Discords when that comes up. And this thing is giving me trouble. Why is this giving me trouble? Let's pull these wires out. But yeah, I stream to Twitch and YouTube just to get the best coverage. I'd do it to Facebook too if it didn't mean that like my family would watch. I don't want my family to watch, because they're just gonna say, "Pat, you're a nerd," like they always do. That's fine. I'm okay with being a nerd. As long as I'm the coolest nerd, I'm fine. Tuck those cables in there like that. Go like this. Screws. I really want some like nylon tri-wing screwdrivers, something that would kind of strip the screws a little bit and leave them a little bit more black. But otherwise, we got a Nintendo connector, we got a Super Nintendo controller. Instead of having here, I kind of bundle this up so you can kind of see the difference in length. So this was the original cable. It's about 5 feet. The Famicom ones are actually much shorter. They're about 3 feet. Those are straight up sadistic as far as I don't know. Apple was probably or not Apple. Nintendo was sadistic when they made those. So that's this cable. It's about 5 feet. So I swapped in a SNES extension cable. It's going to take me a little bit to bundle up. So yeah, you can just kind of see like this is a lot more cable. This cable isn't like, it's not like the matte gray that the other one has, but at least it's got the old tip on it, so it still says Nintendo. But yeah, that's about it. So we did 2 controllers, boom, and we did the super storage, which you couldn't even tell this thing was modded. And there's a blue light that comes on that you can see through the fan grills. Or not the fan grills, but the heat grills. But that's, I mean, it doesn't even look like it was opened. There's no stickers or anything like that that you have to break in order to install the super storage, so it ends up looking pretty nice. Like I said, I'll be doing another video probably this week on an install. I'm waiting on a couple people to send theirs in. So if you want to see what that would look like, you can either check out the install video that I have posted already. That's pretty old at this point. Or you can subscribe and you get a notification. Or you can just pay attention to the Discord and subscribe in your own way. So I think that's all I'm going to do. It's 2:37 here. So thanks for watching, and I hope you get more sleep than I do. Thanks. Bye.